I think we're live. So if we are live, hello and welcome to Exploring Glorantha. We were just talking about uh, Evan's 13th Age Glorantha game, which if you have not checked out, you should go check out on our channel. For it was amazing. Evan, do you want to give us a brief recap of the 13th Age Glorantha game that you ran for the iconic production channel?
Sure. So we called the session Rising Moon Rescue. Was a scenario set far from Dragon Pass to the west in the Danube River Valley of Frenella, where there are independent city-states dominated by believers in the lunar faith, but who are not part of the Empire. And they face an existential threat in a political entity called the Kingdom of War, which is rampaging across Frenella, threatening everyone. But help was coming from the Red Emperor, except the moonboat with the gift never arrived. So heroes from the city of East Point were summoned and sent forth to regain the gift before enemies could capture it or die. And that was the game, and it was a lot of fun. Just amazing players. And so if you want to check it out, it used some homebrew rules, which are being developed for a special issue of Escalation Magazine, the free fan magazine for 13th Age and 13th Age Glorantha. And when it comes out someday, eventually, it will be called Red Moon and Warring Kingdoms. So.
And we will post all of the excited gifs and just shout to all the way to the Sky Dome that this is released. I've gotten the chance to read through a lot of it, and it is great stuff. So, Evan, again, thanks for running that on the Iconic channel. If you haven't checked it out, go check out our YouTube channel. If you are here watching this, you are most likely a patron of Iconic, so you are familiar with all of the great shows that we offer on the Iconic production channel. But today's show is the show that we've all been waiting for. It is Exploring Glorantha, where Evan and I sit and we tease out different pieces of lore for Glorantha as kind of an overview of the setting and preparing GMs to really kind of run the game and kind of giving our advice. We've been steeping in Glorantha for more years than I'd care for either of us to necessarily talk about. But it is one of our favorite settings, and obviously we love it, so we are here with our new episode. And this episode is going to be about Pantheons. It's going to be the second of 3 or 4 episodes on the Pantheons, just of Dragon Pass, trying to give you an overview of the gods. Because as we've talked about, if you're jumping in here on episode 9, enjoy this episode and then go back and watch the other ones. Because unlike other fantasy worlds, Glorantha doesn't just believe that the gods are real, which is sort of a conceit for all fantasy games, but that the gods are ever present and that humanity interacts with them on a daily basis in a way that keeps creation running. It's not just, oh, hey, Al made the Forgotten Realms and then just kind of is up there and the gods are there and their clerics are really the main ways you interact with them. No, everyone in Glorantha is interacting with the gods on a daily basis. And again, as we've talked about, these myths are important because they kind of reinforce the way the world works. So last time we covered the first 2 pantheons, darkness and earth, right? Yes. There was chaos, and then creation began, and darkness arose, and from the darkness, the waters came out. And today we're going to talk about the lozenge of earth that sort of floats in the waters, and then the establishment of the sky. And again, at the end of each of these sections, we'll talk about why these are important, and as a GM or a player, why you would want to engage with them. But Evan, if you don't mind, I'll start off discussing the Esrolians and the Earth cultists, because Earth is one of those pantheons that's very important to the people of Sartar. So again, we're focusing in on Dragon Pass to start because that's really sort of the focus of RuneQuest Glorantha It's sort of the focus of 13th Age Glorantha and HeroQuest. Now, obviously, if you don't know what Evan was talking about the Kingdom of War and the River Valley and all of these things, that's available in like the Glorantha source book. Evan's going to provide a lot of context for 13th Age Glorantha when his supplement comes out in Escalation. And if you are in the doctoral program for Glorantha and have the guides to Glorantha, you can expand this, far beyond. But of all of the pantheons we're going to talk about, save for Storm, I would argue that Earth is the most important after Storm, kind of hand in hand, because the Earth pantheon is the pantheon of the Esrolians, which are to the southwest of Dragon Pass, and there are a lot of Esrolians in Dragon Pass and in Sartar. And additionally, the main tie to the Storm tribe is the fact that Orlanth marries Ernalda, binding Storm and Earth together through marriage. And so when we talk about Earth, we are talking about like a very Greco-Roman view of the Earth. The land, the vital essence of the soil, the not just the ground beneath your feet, but all of the symbolism that comes with that. So the Esrolians, they are the main adherents, as I said, of Earth, and they believe that the world came from that Ga was the formless Earth, and the formless Earth kind of gave birth to the fullness of the four corners. Again, Glorantha's not a globe. We don't get to say lozenge nearly enough in today's day and age, and so it's a lozenge kind of floating on the surface of the waters. And these four corners, Gata, the Earth the Earth Witch, the Empress, and the King, and then Ga sort of rent herself to make the continents. Now, what's interesting is, and Evan and I, we can chat about this, is that Ella, if you are interested in linguistics, it feels like Ella is the Gloranthan word for land, and it's usually with the god of that land. So you have Genertella and Pamatella and Franella and all of these different regions of the world. But the Earth gods, in some ways, suffered the most during the Great Darkness. Several of their great gods died. Gunert died, which just laid waste to large sections of the northern continent of Glorantha, which is where we're focused. Anything you want to add in there before we get into what the Earth cultists believe happens to their souls after death?
I guess the only elaboration I would add is that, obviously we are focused on the Dragon Pass area, and one of the contrasts and one of the great yet to be developed areas, although I think many fans and others have ventured beyond, as JM said, Gennert, the Earth King of the northern continent, has essentially a twin or a brother for the southern continent, Pamatella, Pomalt, the great Earth King of the south, and he's not dead. He is, still. So the male principle of Earth and fertility lives in the south, whereas it is sort of shattered in the north. And while there still remains a sort of male-aligned principle here and there, they are more minor gods and heroes, and the northern continent is completely dominated by the female principle. And we'll be launching into that and hearing about all of the great female goddesses rather, mm-hmm. as we delve deeper into the era.
And that's a really one, great pun. Two, that's a really great point, because the Earth cultists, out of all of the pantheons, save maybe the Lunars, although you could argue that the Lunars have a more balanced view of it, the Earth cultists are primarily dominated by women. They're matriarchal societies. The land Esrola is the land of 10,000 goddesses. My favorite spell from the Red Book of Magic is that pun was no, sorry, not that pun. That the spell that says, all right, cool. All of the pain and sickness and trauma of childbirth, we're going to put on the father, and the mother basically just gets to move through the pregnancy with just all of the joy. So they're very focused on fertility. They're very focused on, as Evan said, kind of the matriarchal society. Also, what's interesting is Ernalda. When we get to this, Ernalda is one of those goddesses that is featured heavily in almost every other Pantheon story. Earth has been wife and mother to essentially the whole of the Pantheons. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So, as we said in our last episode, all of the cults of Glorantha have three main questions that they answer. Where did the world come from, which we explain, what happens after death, and why does magic work? So after death, the Esrolians sort of believe that the soul passes on to judgment into the underworld, and after a time of either blessing or torment, they are reborn into the world. Tykoratek is the keeper that kind of watches over the souls of those who have dedicated their life to the Earth Pantheon. And from that is kind of where their magic comes from. They believe that the life force of the earth are each of these bountiful goddesses, and they all have their gifts. So, like Esrola and her children feed people, and Arcerelia keeps the harvest. Tykoratek tends to the dead. Ernalda is kind of the wife and mother of everything. And what we'll see as we kind of delve into this, there are the desolate places of the world have mythic resonances that explain why Prax is the way it is and why these dead places are. And they're usually due to the death of the earth god, Gnalt, or some sacrifice by the earth goddesses around them. So, Evan, do you want to start us off with the Earth Queen? Talk about Ernalda and her importance in Dragon Pass.
Yeah. So Ernalda is the great central, most important Earth goddess for the northern continent, and certainly in Dragon Pass is the undisputed chief deity for women. She is the model of all womanly arts from the sort of not that women of course can break that stereotype, but for a Bronze Age society to function, you have this sort of standard, and Ernalda sets that standard of how to be a woman leader, how to be a wife, how to be a mother, how to engage with the powers and spirits of the earth, to engage through the entire life cycle, whether that's the life cycle of crops, life cycle of livestock, life cycle of the members of the clan and the tribe, the family, and the principle also of providing the balance with the stereotypically male principle in Dragon Pass provided by Orlanth, and in Esrola, for example, of course, Ernalda has a variety of husband protectors, and they are less important in that society. They take a secondary role. In some ways, it's very similar to the trolls and the Darkness Pantheon, where Kyger Lator is the great matriarch, and her son is sort of the warrior god, but he is secondary and subservient, and that is a very similar situation say in the Esrolian society, where the husband protectors might be Orlanth, or might be Yelmalio, or might be Arganagar. And the real importance is that it are not all the things that the husband protector does, because you can replace him. But what the powers of the goddess and the bloodline, the family, you always know who the mother is. You don't necessarily know who the father is. And so, all of that principle flows through Ernalda as Earth Queen, as model for all feminine roles within society.
Yeah. And what's as you said, it's really interesting that what we'll see is Ernalda. So Call brings up a good point. She is the apex female role model for all of Dragon Pass. And
Absolutely.
what's interesting is it would have been very easy to sort of lean into kind of the older trope of, let's call it the Helen of Troy trope, where the powerful protector steals away the queen from a less worthy rival. But that's not the way Glorantha does it. There is wooing, but it always comes back to Ernalda's choice. Ernalda chooses Flamal to seed the earth with trees and growth and forest. And every year, that marriage is sanctified through myth and hero questing. And she chose to be the Empress of Yelm. And she chose Orlanth. It's always Ernalda's decision on who she takes as a husband protector. When we get to the Sky Pantheon, we'll probably read at least a portion of the wooing of Ernalda. But Ernalda fits very prominently not only into all of the Earth Pantheon stories, but those of Sky and those of Storm. We'll get to that in a bit. But as Evan said, like Ernalda's priestesses, when we get to kind of the discussion of the player and the GM thing, just remember all of the things that Earth stands for. If you go to the RuneQuest Glorantha rulebook, it's got like, when you go to the Earth rune, it gives you like, here are the organs that are important, here are the skills that are important to Earth, here are the personality types that are important to Earth. All of those kind of feed into the Pantheon. So if you need your players to find healing on the road, if you need your players to find wisdom or prophecy on the road, if you need your players to find bounty or blessings for the tribe and the clan and the fertility, these are all things that they're going to head toward the Pantheon of Earth for. Now, Evan, I'm going to lean on you here because I forgot to grab my book off the shelf. I'll go do that while you give us an introduction to Esrola, the Earth Mother.
Okay. Great. Well, so Esrola, so different regions of the northern continent have these great regional goddesses as well. And Esrola is the region for the central part of Ganartella. And obviously the great Earth Mother for Esrolia itself, but also well honored throughout Dragon Pass. And how is her role different than Ernalda? Hers is a step closer to mortals. And for example, a mortal hero might marry Esrola to obtain sovereignty, for example, of a region, and also she is as the embodiment of the physical land. She is also tied to the grain goddesses, the individual goddesses, again, another step away from the Earth Queen, who are the patrons of the various staves of life, the cereals and other um, uh, key crops that are grown throughout the area, and so different grain goddesses will be honored in different areas. But Esrola, as their mother and as sort of their organizer, as the land from which they spring, um, is extremely important. And I'd step back to one other thing so mentioning, jumping back to Ernalda quickly, she has these husband protectors, and she is also, the ideal is that she is the peacemaker, whereas Orlanth says violence is always an option.
Mm-hmm.
Her motto is there is always another way. But on the other hand, she invokes the protection of her husband when threatened. So it is not that she is a pacifist, but when appropriate, she has the wisdom and foresight to know when the other way is appropriate. But she also knows when to call on the powers of the protectors in order to safeguard her children, her worshippers, and her lands.
So two things. One, I'll add to that because one of the interesting things about Glorantha is they have multiple different types of marriage to sort of reflect this, right? In the Orlanth culture, typically the male is it is a marriage where the male is the head, or a marriage of equals. In Esrolian culture, typically the woman is the head of the house, or it is a marriage of equals. And there's a couple of other ones that someday we'll get into down the road. Just keep kicking the can down the road so that people keep coming back at it. The other thing is, if you guys have not played God's War, and hopefully one day we'll get Evan out here and we'll stream a big game of God's War down at the studio. Sandy Peterson did just an amazing job tying all of these myths and stories into the actual mechanics of this asymmetrical war game. So the Earth Pantheon, Ernalda can actually give out wedding rings to and Earth priestesses as wives to the other players, and she gains victory points for that. She sort of and there's a lot of peace. Cards that say you can't attack me while an Earth priestess is in your army because I am Earth. They always count as 0. So really cool mechanics kind of wrapped around there. Now, I'm going to talk about kind of two gods, Earth gods, at the same time. Sorry, Evan, I'm juking on you here.
Oh.
I'm breaking the outline. Just
Go
throwing
ahead.
the notes
Gosh.
into here.
What?
I know, right? So, Flamal and Aldrya. Now, Flamal, as we mentioned, is sort of the god of growth of trees, the father of seeds, one of the husband protectors of Ernalda. What you'll see is sort of this evolution of creation. So the earth comes into being, and then Ernalda marries Flamal, and trees are born throughout Glorantha. And then so every if you have not looked at it, there's a great HeroQuest now called QuestWorlds book called Kingdom of Heroes, Sartar Kingdom of Heroes, and one of the adventures in there starts off at the celebration of the marriage of Flamal and Ernalda. And so that's one of the interesting things to keep in mind is this is a celebration by the Orlanthi of the marriage of Flamal and Ernalda. There is no jealousy among the husband protectors or their followers in general. We also see this sort of pick up in the legend of Argrath and the actual kings of Dragon Pass, because you can declare yourself the king of Sartar, but the only way you actually are the king of Dragon Pass is if you become the husband protector of the Feathered Horse Queen. So it's fractals. It's all the way down. The mythic stories start in the god time, but they're continually emulated in the daily lives. Now, one of Flamal and Ernalda's children is the earth goddess Aldrya. And Aldrya takes what her father did, the birthing of the trees, and in a very Ent-like move, awakens, like gives birth to the elves. So Aldrya is the mother goddess of both Earth and of the elves. Because remember, in Glorantha, elves and dwarves are not elves and dwarves. They're not Tolkien-esque or Gygaxian elves and dwarves. Um, Elves are dryads. They are far more, they are bound to trees. They have tree like characteristics to them. And the dwarves are quite literally carved or cast into existence. So those two gods kind of represent the earth's bounty, both of tree, whereas Esrola is the goddess of grain. These are the gods of trees, things that seed and flower, and then sort of the protectors of these things, right? What we're going to also see when we get to Babeester Gor is this recognition and this understanding that the earth has to eventually be able to defend itself. It can't just rely on the the grace and the goodness of these husband protectors. Now, I know Becca is in the chat. Babeester Gor has played quite a violent presence in our RuneQuest Glorantha game. Evan, shall we? Now, I will just say this is we have not ever designed this show for children. But as you may have noticed from the image, the Earth of the Earth Pantheon, and what we're about to talk to, this gets into some of the more bloody, violent, and adult themes of Glorantha. So you have been warned. I will do my best to make that warning writ large across the screen when we do our Chaos episode. But Evan, would you like to start us off with Babeester Gor?
Yeah. Well, so the high level view, Babeester Gor is daughter of Ernalda, and she is the Earth Avenger. As JM said, it's great to bring a husband protector or three into your orbit, but eventually you also have to engage in some self-help. And there are two Gor goddesses. The other is Marangor, the Earth Shaker, which we're not covering in any particular detail, but she's goddess of earthquakes and dinosaurs. Very cool. But she's a little bit more specialized. Babeester Gor is widespread, and these are the temple guardians. These are the bodyguards of the Earth priestesses. These are the axe maidens. So the axe is the weapon of the earth, as the sword is the weapon of the air, the spear and arrow, the weapons of the sky, and the club and mace, weapons of darkness. So the sacred axe, and what do you need to what needs to be avenged against the earth? Well, all sorts of crimes against women, crimes against the gods, burning of fields, looting of temples, violation of family, the sacred family issues, and abuse of women. And when this happens, it is an offense against the Earth Protector, and the axe maidens wear the severed hands and severed other parts of offenders whom they punish.
Yes.
Grievous.
Yeah, the punishment that Babeester Gor tends to hand out is castration. I mean, that is Babeester Gor takes her role as the defender of women very, very, and the earth very seriously. Again, like I said, Babeester Gor's inadvertently kind of become very, very important to my RuneQuest campaign. Several, or at least one character has had a encounter with the goddess herself, and then raised a temple to her. So it all worked out kind of in the end. Now, here's the other thing. She also is a staunch opponent of chaos, because chaos not only is the despoiler of the earth, but takes all of the things that the earth is known for, bounty and fertility and procreation, and perverts and inverts them. So we have disease, we have feed, which we'll talk about in the chaos episode with some good boundaries around it. And so Axe Maidens, the Axe Maidens of Babeester Gor, draw a very hard line against the chaos in the world, and so they can become terrifying but very staunch allies. Another goddess is, we're doing good on. Let me pull my notes up. Another one of the goddesses is, am I pronouncing this right? Eiritha.
Eiritha.
She is linked to the Pantheon, or the Praxian Pantheon, and we'll talk more about her when we go into Prax. But what's important to know is that in the Battle of I Fought We Won, when Stormbull faced off against the Devil, she was vital to the defeat of Chaos, and actually her involvement in this battle is why Prax is now more of a wasteland. Do you want to talk a little bit about this goddess, Evan, or do we want to save it for the Praxian episode? I seem to have lost Evan. Evan, are you there? There we go.
Sorry, Jam, I lost you there for a minute, but you're back.
Excellent.
And maybe you lost me for a minute.
I did, just for a bit. So do you want to give our viewers a brief overview of this goddess, and then we'll talk into why they're important for players and GMs?
Was this Eiritha or
yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
I lost you so much that I wasn't sure how far you got. Okay, great. Sorry.
Curse the moon
Eiritha,
and its interference.
Damn it. Sorry. Bleep that. So for the Praxians, Eiritha is the herd mother, the goddess who is the patron of all of the great and small groups of riding animals in Prax. And again, we'll cover those, but buffalo and great big llamas and impalas, etc. But for Sartar properly, she is also the sort of apex goddess of the domesticated animals. So she is the cow mother, who oversees the herds, which are vitally important. That is the basis for wealth for Sartarite peoples and Orlanthi peoples in general. In the King of Dragon Pass game, she's referred to as Ernalda, but that is an old term, and in the present continuity, it's been recognized that really she is that's just another mask. And Eiritha, because of the increased influence and contact with the Praxians, that mask has become more important. But and she has children who are the patrons of sheep and other domesticated animals, such that this is a goddess who oversees the critical economic foundation. Just as crops are important, domesticated animals are also vital to the life and vitality and wealth, trade, all the foundational things in order to run civilized society in Dragon Pass, from the great urban centers in the Holy Country up through into the high mountain refuges of the Tarshite rebels against the lunar-occupied Tarsh. This goddess is important because cows, sheep, and these vital parts of Orlanthe society are central.
All right, so let's talk why this is important. Evan and I can talk. I'm JM. Evan and I can talk about Gloranthan goddesses and gods and pantheons till the herds come home. But why is this important to our games? Right, we're exploring Glorantha is focused not just on the world of Glorantha, but how do we use this in our games? So, as we mentioned, outside of the Storm Pantheon, this is the major pantheon of Dragon Pass. If you are playing RuneQuest Glorantha, if you're playing 13th Age Glorantha, you have limited choices on the cultures you can come from as humans. Esrolian is a major culture in this. The other thing is this pantheon touches on every aspect of life in Dragon Pass. Birth, marriage, death, fertility, the growing of crops, the herding of animals. So basically, anything that needs to be done to live or to continue the clan's existence, these are all things that are intimately tied with the earth. And so for me, earth and fertility, or life as the rune was called in the older editions of the games, they need to be coming up a lot in games, at least for me, because here's the thing. It's all about living in Dragon Pass. And so, yes, your Warrior of Orlanth may be a BA Rune Lord with Iron Sword and armor, but when he's wounded, where does he go? Well, he goes to the Earth temples. He goes to the mothers and the wives of the clan to heal them. And in fact, it's this dichotomy of the masculine in Dragon Pass is very much focused outward of the clan, right? The defenders, the warriors, those who press back against the forces of the world. Whereas the Earth pantheon, the feminine pantheon, is very much focused inward on the clan. And that, as Evan pointed out, that does not mean that they are not violent and capable of shedding blood in the defense of those that under their care. It is just more of Orlanth tends to be focused outward in a warlike manner, and Ernalda is focused inward to keep the peace through violence if necessary. So when you're looking at that, that's one interesting way to kind of maybe look at how Storm and Earth interact, is that Storm is the outward, the ever-expanding cloud, whereas Earth is the paladine, the hearth, the hearthstone, the home, the anchor that everything, the foundation that everything is sort of built on. Evan, anything to add about bringing this into your games?
Sure. Well, so of course we have set up sort of the stereotype or the steady state, and then of course for adventurers are always in some ways outsiders, as JM in the other Great Bronze Age game Jackals, written by JM. The adventurers are outsiders who must sort of break with society, and so something, what hurts you to make you want to go out and fight monsters and stuff and not stay home and raise cattle and have a family, etc. Something happened, and almost certainly there's some danger to or offense against the earth or some principle of the earth, because it's so pervasive, just as we've laid out. And so if those things are motivating a perceived threat, Babeester Gor, the Earth Avenger, has to go out and maybe do some anticipatory avenging. You don't want to make it just the stereotypical, oh, my village was ravaged and now that's a helpful trope sometimes, but you want to be open to players playing with these principles and constructing interesting backgrounds and stories, motivations, and putting these things in their path, and whether there's a society that's engaging the adventurers, mythically as, seeing them collectively as husband protectors, or needing to, invert the principle. The husband protectors are gone, and so we need to engage in self-help. All of these things are interesting ways to play with the themes, and I encourage people to think about that and let their imagination run wild, because that's what Glorantha is about. Your Glorantha will vary, and you will find the stories that are appealing to you, but the tools are all there. There's all these wonderful toys in the toy box. Take them out and put them together in a way that you and your players find compelling.
Now, if you want to really dive into this, I would recommend looking at taking your group to Esrola, the land of many goddesses, because that's kind of where the Earth is. But the other thing to remember is that Earth sort of acts as a balancing principle in Glorantha. If your characters are engaging in the, adventures of the more murder hobo-y variety, it may be the Earth priestesses, up to and including the Axe Maidens of Babeester Gor, who are the ones who are sent out to correct their ways. So that's another way to look at it, is that, right, in the eyes of the Earth Pantheon, the whole of the Earth is one. And so when actions are taken against the Earth, it's not just the locals that come to deal with it. If the wound is great enough, the Earth Pantheon comes to deal with it, and their representatives. And so sometimes we're used to adventurers with the ends justifying the means, and Earth acts as a very good counter to that. All right, so we're at our just over a halfway mark. This might be a little bit long, and we're going to go into the Sky Pantheon, because the Sky Pantheon sets up the birth of the Storm Pantheon. And so let me make our change here, and we will start into this. So the Sky Pantheon. Now the thing is, remember, the sky in Glorantha, if the Earth is a lozenge floating on the waters above the darkness, the sky is the dome of the heavens, the firmament. If we're going to go old King Jimmy on this, and so the sky is actually not the air, though. That's Orlanth's realm. The sky is the heavens, the planets, the stars, the moon. Right? These are the sun. These are the domains of the sky, and the Sky Pantheon is very much the pantheon of fire. We talked about how kind of the classical elements sort of develop here. And, right, it is not until Yelm comes into existence, until the Sky Pantheon comes to existence, that a lot of Ernalda's bounty can actually flourish. Like, there is this tearing up, this refinement from chaos into order that creates the world as we know it. And so the main adherents of Sky are really going to be the Pelorians, those that remain, followers of Yelm or Yelmalio, or the Sun Dome Templars, which are just a fascinating subsect of this cult. Now, the adherents of the Sky Pantheon believe that the world came to being when Aether, this invisible fire, generated the whole of the world out of his own energies. And essentially, as he started, the first thing that came into existence was smoke. Right, he started to burn, and of course, smoke started to smolder, and that's darkness, right? And then as he gripped the torch or the fire stick, depending on your interpretation of the ancient texts, of which Evan and I have poured over extensively, doing all of the translation work for you. Liquid, he gripped the torch so much that the pitch or the liquid kind of flowed out of the end of it. And from that, the oceans or the water pantheon came into being. But of course, then the stick was dried out, and as he dropped it, it became the earth. And then he finally was able to ignite it with Lodril, the god of flame. And that is where the world kind of sprung into existence from. And what's interesting is what you can see is that at least among the theocratic cults, the cults that believe in the gods, the story unfolds always in the same manner, but never in the same way, which is something that is just beautiful about Glorantha, because it's the same thing that we see in our own ancient Near East, right? There's always a rebellion. There's always an ascension of a storm god. There's always the descent into chaos, the slaying of chaos to push it back. This is Greco-Roman mythology. This is Egyptian mythology. This is Ugaritic mythology. This is Babylonian mythology. This is this is the stories from the ancient Near East that we see repeated and reworked in multiple ways. Now, after death, there is a refinement. It's not so much the underworld as we would necessarily see it, like in the Earth or the Storm Pantheon. It is a reincarnation of the souls of those who died following the sun or the Sky Pantheon, but were not yet ready to ascend to their final reward. So the souls are put back kind of in the furnace of Glorantha, where they are continually refined until they are pure enough to join with the sun. And much in the same way as in the Bronze Age, you may carry fire in a vessel to be able to ignite your fire at night. That's where magic comes from. Mortals are the vessels for this divine power. The more refined their spirit, the more, I'm going to use a fading sun's term, the more they can reflect the light of the sun in their soul's mirror. And so the more power, like the rune priests and the rune lords are considered closer to the purity of the sun. I do love the fact that followers of Yelmalio, the cold fire, and I don't know if this is the case for Yelm, you'll have to correct me on this, Evan, is the fact that, right, they spend their days staring into the sun for revelation until they go blind, right? The blind priests of Yelmalio are a very important part of this culture.
Yep. We're still getting developments on Yelm. I have a feeling that the priests of Yelm are maybe more resistant or immune to that level of blindness, because Yelmalio is one step further from that inner purity of the circles of the sun. Yelm is the universal emperor, uniting all of the powers of light and fire. Yelmalio is somewhat fallen, although loyal and staunch, but lesser.
Right, and so basically, when Lodril and Aether establish the world, they enthrone Yelm as the great emperor, and everything was perfect under Yelm's rule, but nothing could change. It was the perfection of stasis. It was the perfection of immutability. And when we get to the Storm episode in July, we will be off next month in June. I will remind you at the end of the episode. When we get to the Storm Pantheon in July, we can see that, well, we're all Orlanthi, I think, is kind of how we all come to Dragon Pass, and we love it. Orlanth sort of messed everything up. If you go back and look at our Lightbringer episode, he messed things up horribly. But he then created the space for things to change and evolve, and maybe it's not the perfection as Yelm saw it, but there is still goodness and greatness in the world. Orland's story really reminds me of the poem Ulysses by Tennyson, that we are, lesser than we were is essentially the theme of the story. We are still we're still able to strive for something better. So Yelm is the Sun Emperor. He is still worshipped. If you go back to our Lightbringer episode, basically the whole focus of the Lightbringer quest is to bring Yelm back to life and set the world right in some way. The reason that he is not in the sky all the time is, of course, due to the events of the Gods' War, where he died. And so Yelm has to spend half of his time in the underworld and half of his time in the sky. Moving on from Yelm, Evan, do you want to talk about Dayzatar and Lodril?
Yeah. So Dayzatar um, is a very distant god. He's the upper, the upper pure light. It does not, interact with the earth. It is the glowing of all the sky dome, beyond it. And so uh, Dayzatar is more of a principle important in its mythological role and as a symbol of the ultimate purity of light. Um, and I believe the little that is written about Dayzatar is that there is, of course, in the very civilized heartland of Peloria, the bastion of solar belief, there are priests dedicated to Dayzatar, but they are not the adventuring type. They get esoteric and what seems like sort of preposterous spells and rituals, things that come from this perfect age and this connection back to the time before the world got messy. But looking at it from the perspective of the world as it exists, it seems at best sort of fussy and really sort of incomprehensible. On the other hand, Lodril is the earth, is the intersection of the sky and earth. Lodril is the volcano god. Lodril is the rustic peasant. He is the everyman. He is sometimes the butt of jokes. He is the embarrassing uncle. He likes dirty jokes, and he likes to drink, and he likes all other earthly delights, keeping it,
as family friendly as we can before
as
the
family friendly
chaos
as we can.
episode.
That's right. Then all bets are off.
All bets are off.
So he is the god of the people, and on the one hand, he is needed because the elite who worship Yelm and who trace their who spend much of their time tracing their genealogy back to the original emperors and everything to show the degree of their purity, etc. They practice all of the noble arts of civilization. They need the mass of peasantry to keep them fed, to tend to their animals, to carry on all of the work of society. But of course, they're embarrassed by them because they are unclean, they are lesser, they are lower, and they are the province of Lodril. And so, on the one hand, when they have their gleaming hoplites who are the professional soldiers, but in order to hold the field, you also have to have all of the militia who are the Lodrili spearmen, who are the levies, the cannon fodder, the mass of warriors that have to also help to hold the field. And so Lodril is very complex, not held up in high society as an important god, although he has to be acknowledged. He is also a god who was in the Gods' War was bound by his powers of the spear were stolen, or at least learned by Arganagar. Again, we hear of this important intermediary between the underworld and the real world. And one of the things he did was he beat Lodril and suppressed him and held him and stole some of his knowledge. And so, Lodril in many ways to someone who follows Yelm is kind of an embarrassment, but beloved because he is just one of the guys.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about Glorantha, and the Chaosium has been talking a lot about the Gods of Glorantha book that will be coming out. A nice two book slipcase. We are just scratching the surface. We could talk about Polaris, the pole star and the keeper of the heavens and the general of the army of heavens. We could talk about Yelorna, and I really love Shardash. But we may have to save these for a later time because there are so many gods, and each god in at least the preview copy has 4 to 6 pages worth of information on their cult, which is just, if you enjoy the mythological aspects of Glorantha, I wait just on bated breath for this book to actually be released with the PDF. But the last one I really want to talk about is Yelmalio, because Call brought out, yes, Zarak Zaran, the berserker god of the trolls. He fights with Yelmalio in the God's War. Yelm is dead. Yelmalio has sort of taken his father's place, and ends up getting involved in this fight with what, at least in Yelmalio's eyes, is this dark, trollish being, doesn't care, and the battle goes very poorly for Yelmalio. His fire is cut out of him, which in my mind is what drives Zarak Zaran's berserker rage. That's just, I don't know that that's official canon. That's at least JM's headcanon. And so Yelmalio is known as the cold sun. He has light, but he has no flame. And so Yelmalio kind of serves as a lesser light during the time of darkness, and is still around. He's probably, in Dragon Pass, the most ubiquitous version of the sun worship, especially in his role and tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, as Elmal, who is the sun variant that is subservient to Orlanth. He is connected with the Storm Pantheon.
Yes. And Elmal, of course, has, in the timeline that we're in with 13th Age Glorantha and RuneQuest Glorantha, Adventures in Glorantha, is Elmal is sort of the old version, and Yelmalio has seen a resurgence, and many of the clans that followed Elmal have converted to Yelmalio as sort of realizing that this more pure version is really what their god was about. Again, these mythological fragments, because again, Glorantha in some ways is a post-apocalyptic world, in that we had this perfect world, and then everything was sort of destroyed and fragmented, and it's constantly being rediscovered. And so Elmal was the god, but then more things were unearthed, and it was realized by many that, well, Yelmalio, this more militaristic, not subservient, but in some ways antagonistic, at least ritually antagonistic to Orlanth, and yet politically within Sartar, and a potential ally, and in fact a Sartarate prince, was a patron of developing this, because it was a bulwark against fighting darkness aligned creatures. We're diving very deep, and we could do whole shows on all this. But so Yelmalio and Elmal's relationship. Elmal is sort of the old passe version now, in stories, but less venerated. And Yelmalio is now the new shiny, at least at Sartar. But in many places, out in Prax, in Sun County, an amazing setting that's been developed a lot. Yelmalio is an old and long venerated god, a patron of mercenary companies, and of communities of soldier farmers, often on the margins, often there to defend civilization from the depredations of the wilds, barbarians and monsters, and so very, even though he had the tar beat out of him by Xeraxaran and lost many of his powers, he is still the stalwart guardian and the disciplined soldier.
Mm-hmm. Now, for me, when we come to followers in play, Evan pointed out, like, hey, the Sundome Templars. So in Sartar, we find them in Sun County, in Aldachor, in Runegate, in Prax. They exist in Suntown and Sun County. But what's really interesting to me about Sun and Sky, these are the guys, these are the old timers who lament the fact that, like, Orlanth is now king. And you know what? It used to be real. Everything used to be better back in the day when Yelm was in control. They have no true place in Dragon Pass. Evan keeps referring to Peloria, and right, but Peloria is now governed by the Lunar Empire. So there's no place for Yelm in large parts of the Lunar Empire. They have the Sun County in Prax and in Sartar, but again, this is like one little county in the midst of enemy space. And so what's interesting for me is that I view the Sun County Templars, as Evan said, these people on the margin who show up and defend the way the world should have been. Like, I love the idea of the Sun County Templars showing up to help an Orlanthi clan fighting chaos, not because they were hired, but because, hey, this is the way the world should have been. You should have all been, subservient to Yelm in the perfect world, and we would have driven chaos out. But no, you had to have your storm gods, and look where that got us.
Exactly. And if I throw in one other thing, which we sidelined a little bit here, and I blame myself, is that the other place in Dragon Pass, the other peoples that are solar worshippers, although because we fixate very much on the female line, are the Grazelanders. Grazelanders are pure horse people, originally from the north, and they follow the Sun Horse, and they too venerate, their warriors venerate a form of Yelm, and this again is the sort of transformational. They are not the civilized, following agriculture, etc. These are nomadic. They are the Scythians. They are the Huns. They are focused on the horse, but the sky. The horses come from the sky. Their chiefs, their hunters, their warriors are all sky inspired and in the structure of a different form of Yelm worship. And then they are tied, just wrapping a bow on it, to the earth. The earth, the feathered horse queen is the embodiment of the earth powers, the things that give life and bounty, fertility and wealth, and bring those to the people. And so the Gracelanders are another great place to explore both earth and sky.
I mean, that's a great way to wrap it up here. I would also just say, remember, movement versus stasis. These are two opposing forces, literally on the character sheet of RuneQuest Glorantha. But in some ways, Storm really embodies the movement, and Yelm and Sky embody the stasis. And so, again, going back to this idea of, hey, the runes not only should guide player actions, but should be things that you build adventures on in Glorantha. If you need something to challenge Orlanthi, by gods, use Yelmalio, use Sky, this remnant of the old order that even Orlanth had to submit to for creation to survive. What these little sun counties are is they are islands of stasis in a very changing world. And so if you want to lean into that power rune pair of stasis versus movement, Sky and the Sundome Templars are a great way to provide a foil to your Orlanthi barbarians. Now, just to plug a product that we have nothing to do with but has been very helpful in our discussion today, Armies and Enemies of Dragon Pass.
Yes.
Massive book, available on PDF. If the authors are watching, I wait on bated breath for it to be released as a print on demand. But it is like a 360-ish page book on the armies and the units and the tactics of the military forces in Dragon Pass, including all of these things that Evan talked about today: the Lodril peasant militia and the Sundome Templars and the Pelorian cavalry. And if you want to really look at that, check that PDF out. Both Evan and I have bought it. It is just amazing.
Yeah.
So
find it on Johnstown Compendium, Drive Through RPG.
Yes. Thank you to all of our patrons who make this show possible and who were involved in the chat today. A special shout out to Call, because not only is he a huge Glorantha fan, but we were able to have him on that episode of 13th Age Glorantha of the Lunars product that Evan is writing for Escalation, which was just amazing to watch him engage with the world. I love interacting with him on chat, so thank you for joining us. If you like exploring Glorantha and you are catching this a week later after the live episode goes live, please consider checking out our Patreon. It's how we are able to do shows like this, continue to do shows like this, to bring Evan on to do special projects. So just consider checking that out. Like us here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. On Monday nights, Becca, who is also in the chat, hi Becca, runs a great Call of Cthulhu game, Horror on the Orient Express. Fridays, Josh runs our 5th edition game, It Gets Worse. I don't really know that I need to explain anything more. As I've said, it is the best titled D&D campaign of all time. You can find me running games of Jackals. We have 2 playlists. As Evan said, it's my Bronze Age fantasy game by Osprey Publishing. It's the big campaign for it. Fall of the Children of Bronze comes out this week for if you are outside of the U.S., and in about a month if you are inside the U.S. If you order it from Osprey, you'll probably get it sometime between those dates. And and you can also find me running games on the Ulysses International channel. I run the Torg game on Tuesdays and the Fading Sun game on Thursdays. So if you're at all interested in seeing how I run games, please consider checking us out. Also, if you are a patron and you are watching this right now, in about 22 minutes, I will be going live again with Nick, Becca, and Mark for our live episode where we are talking about planning an iconic game. We're going to answer some questions from the Patreons. If you're a patron, you can please jump on our Discord server, interact with us. We love chatting. We love talking about the games we're running, just games in general. The Glorantha thread is very, very active. So, Evan, thank you as always for joining me on this. As much as I would love to hear just myself talk, I could just sit back and listen to you wax eloquently on Glorantha for hours and hours. So I appreciate you journeying with me on this as well.
The pleasure is all mine.
Well, until next time, again, we will be back with more Exploring Glorantha in July. We will post that link for our patrons. They'll get access to it. It'll go live about a week later for the general public. And we will be talking about the Sky and the Moon Pantheons. And then...
Storm.
What was that?
Storm.
Right, Storm. Thank you, Evan. Storm and Moon and their mutual hatred of each other. And then most likely in August, we will be doing our Chaos discussion. And again, that will have a bunch of warnings around it. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This is my co-host, Evan. And we will be back with more Exploring Glorantha in 2 months. Have a good one.
We are all us.
We are all us. So, Evan, I mean, I feel like that was just a great episode. I'm waiting for the stream to, kind of run its way out. And watching myself in the stream, this is always the fun part of the episode.
Right.
All right, we're going to end the stream there.